Hello, everybody. My name is James, and today I'm going to tell you all a story. Now, this is a blank page, but I thought this is the best way to convey the title, it being about negative space, so I thought this was funny. Now, this story begins where all good stories do, with deception and trickery. Or, for lack of better words, I like to call this magic. Now, let's start with deception, with the image on the left. Now, in this image, we could either see two faces or a cup. But the fact is, we don't know if the image is of a cup or of two faces. But that's the beauty of it. Similar could be said about the image on the right. We start to see these running black dots, but they aren't actually there. But it's the interaction between the elements of design placed here that make a new composition and are able to convince this to the viewer. Now, when I start getting into design, I start to understand this better. Our minds are like these fickle things which don't like to see things in vacuum. So it chooses to fill in the blanks for us, and that is something really fascinating. Now, I did say this was about magic, so I'll break it down for you. Now, the true magic in design for me lies in the relationship between the positive and the negative space. A relationship of balance can transcend your design. Because the positive and the negative is what actually guides us together. It is used together so that it can influence our perspective in looking at something. And the space is really what holds our design together. It augments the objects that are within it and brings it all into focus. Now, to understand negative space better, we'll cover 3 points. Now, the first one is about the identity of negative design, negative space. Now, negative space is most recognizable when the pattern or the form it creates is a form that we relate to or recognize. To take upon the first example here, the Coca-Cola bottle is so iconic that when negative space is used to create it, we are able to understand and relate to the context. That's why it's so powerful. And it can be seen across the branding that they convince the users to go through. It all has an impact and a touch of using balance in composition. Now, the second point is about interacting with the user using negative space. Now, in this composition of the black cat, we can see that we can recognize the cat and we can't unsee this image. What this is doing actually is giving the user the sense of decoding and becoming a part of this composition. That is what makes the design more memorable. It has an impact on the user because they were part of this. But something important that we need to come in terms with is that negative space does not only exist when it forms a recognizable form. It lies within anything that is visible to the viewer. And that is the third and very important key point. Now, to understand this better, we need to understand how composition works. And the way I started to understand composition is by relating it to music. Now, music and design go hand in hand, if you could say so. Music also tries to send this message out to the listener the same way a composition does to the viewer. Now, how is music really made? Music is actually a bunch of notes that are spaced well in a manner that create a pattern. This pattern in turn creates rhythm, and that rhythm is actually where the music starts. You can't simply place notes together one after the other without spacing it out and expect to find music. All you can expect is noise. It's very similar when it comes to composition and design. Putting positive elements one after the other doesn't create a good composition. spacing it out using the negative space amplifies the project, amplifies the experience for the viewer. It is what helps us convey a message. Because we need to understand, just like music, visuals also have textures, visuals also have emotions, and that emotion is what leads us to the message. And messages are all what we try to convey. Now, when I started out learning composition, we were given a simple exercise, or at least it sounded simple. All we had to do was using lines and rectangles, place them on a blank canvas. But the catch was it had to convey a message. For example, the first message is a message to convey hierarchy. For me, I took hierarchy in the sense of conveying motion because motion conveys flow, flow in turn conveys hierarchy. But it's debatable. Now, the second aspect of the second message I tried was about direction. Now, direction is something all compositions have because it is important for the designer to understand he needs to guide the eyes of the viewer. He needs to tell them this is the first thing to see, this is the second thing to see, and this is the third. It also plays the role of hierarchy. They all go hand in hand because hierarchy gives a sense of direction because it is a flow as well. Now, the third message is regarding drama. Now, drama is something that leads us to emotion. The drama is something that uses direction to imply an emotion of tension or something's about to happen. Now, in this composition of drama, you could see and feel as though something is falling. It could be falling into place or simply falling. That sense of drama, that sense of emotion that it's able to create for the viewer is the real story. It's the real message. And these simple exercises are how all of us as designers can improve our compositions. Now, the beauty of composition goes beyond just composing letters and just shapes and organic forms or advertising and branding. Even small things like putting a word together has space involved in it. Would you really want to see letters that are really close to each other and stuck to each other? Because that's something annoying. Or if it's too far apart in a word, it's too disturbing. And things like this is what really impact the user. The use of space can transcend your message from good to great. A good balance is the great measure. And as I mentioned before, the magic lies within the relationship of the positive and the negative. Now, if there's one thing I want you to take away from all of this, is that all of us should be more conscious in the way we use negative space. We can't go about filling a page with elements or simply removing all the elements until we're left with something. Because having too much or too little are just as bad as each other. So finding the balance is what is key. And that's how we can send a good message. Now, if I couldn't convince you in these past moments, here's a smart man saying the same thing. So that's been my time. But before I forget this, I'd like to thank everybody at Type Weekend because it's been such a pleasure. So, thank you.